read this whole thing about 100 times now.
That's quite a few.
See this transcript business that's right here. This is from this May 2012 meeting.
Yes.
The conversation you had with Cole personally was when? That's like 2 years ago, right?
I've had a couple conversations with him in 2011 because he was still my neighbor. So, and prior to this, the last conversation I had with him was over at the dairy, and there was not one word about anything with the council or anybody on the council, or you know, it was strictly Happy Father's Day, you know, and that was it. He told me about his son. It was strictly that. So prior to that, the last time I talked to him was 2011. When?
Right.
I don't know. I know I talked to him around May when we first started getting questions about the missing PA system, and I called him and said, "Hey, what happened with it?" So.
You're saying that's almost verbatim what Cole told me. You know, this accusation number one. There is no accusation here that I can find. See, what is the accusation here in number one? What is it?
Can I look at it real quick?
Hmm?
Can I look at the investigation?
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. This accusation number one. What is it? There is no accusation there.
Okay. Initially, the first investigation request.
What?
The first investigation request that was into Bob was asked because Bob had talked to Cole.
Right.
Cole had offered to pay for the PA box. And
Well, and Bob is not denying that, right? Not denying that at all.
Yeah,
right.
the way it's worded.
Right.
Cole felt he was responsible, but I talked to Cole for an hour as a friend, and I'm wondering, when does my personal conversations with a friend translate into I got to gossip about something to the council?
But as the town council treasurer, being offered money, saying, "Hey, I'll take responsibility. Here's the money."
Hold that thought right there. So he's offered this money by Cole, and so what?
He
right?
didn't go to
So
the
what?
council. No.
Wait. Hold on a second, because he did inform the town council that he was offered this money, didn't you? See,
no.
Yeah.
I was never offered money. There was never an offer.
But Cole said,
Hey, what's
responsibility.
It's good to see everybody.
Happy New Year. Merry Christmas.
Happy New Year. Christmas.
Right. That's a wrong way to put it. That offered. Well, talk to him about a reimbursement for this thing. See, my wife was on the town council, and that's what I asked her. Why would Bob? Explain to me why Bob would not make the council aware of this. And she said, "Well, he did."
Well, maybe I did. I mean, forgive me.
And I said, "Well, hold on a second. This is part of the complaint here, that you didn't." But she said, "No, that's not true. You did."
Can I be honest with you? This is a year and a half ago.
Right.
I've worked on 300 trucks.
Exactly.
I've had a couple grandbabies born. I've done a gazillion things. I've had I have over 1,000 conversations a year between customers and family and stuff, and if she says I did, if she remembers, then I did. I can't specifically say I absolutely remember doing it. I'm just being honest. Now, if she says I did, I'll take her at her word. I can't say I did or I didn't. All I can say is a year and a half later, I don't know what I did. I can't tell you how much I weighed.
Right. She said that it might not have been, official at a meeting while they were discussing this matter, but she said, "Oh yeah, that's how I knew all about this." Because I knew all about this too. Like I said, I've known all about this thing. I hear all about it, and I've known all about the PA system. I knew all about coal. I knew all about the offer. I've known all about all of this. Your turn.
So let me also ask you this. Let's go ahead for a moment and play devil's advocate, because it sounds like now he could have or he might not have said something. Let's say Bob didn't mention it to the council. Taking that, let's play for a moment devil's advocate and say he didn't. What can you read the line of what the accusation is referring to Bob not making that apparent to the council? What does that actual complaint or part say?
Neglect, failure or refusal to disclose fully necessary information pertinent to matters of council business.
Okay, so what I would think it would behoove us to say is, if that was even the case, that Bob didn't, because it sounds like we don't know. If he didn't, first, I think as a committee we need to decide, does that constitute neglect or not? Because we could now all go ahead and state a case why it would, from where Scott's coming from is, hey, such information may have swayed the council from making the decision they made. On the other hand, you could also say that such information might have been brought to the council, and the council could have gone, that's nice, who had it last? Because what it really comes down to, in my opinion, is a fundamental difference of who's responsible for the PA. Now, in my opinion, both perspectives are equally valid. One perspective being, which, Bob, correct me if I'm wrong, would be maybe yours, or even what the council decided, would be whoever had it last is the person responsible, plain and simple. And I think that's a valid argument. Where I was coming from was, well, you know what? The guy, he's having a hard time in life right now. He had to step down from his position on the council because of financial difficulties. He finally found another place to stay, and then like a day after he moved in, because it was vacant so long, people probably thought it was empty still and ransacked the place. He got robbed. So my opinion, I was coming from the perspective of, why kick a guy when he's down? Yeah, he lost it, but what a crappy situation for him. In my opinion, I was the president. Maybe I should have kind of also said, hey guy, while you've got all this life turmoil, let me help you out and say, you need to give the thing back. I didn't do my job as president. I wasn't responsible in that situation, I guess you could say. And so, in my opinion, I felt the buck fell with me. If anyone should have to pay for it, it should be me. Is my opinion better than the other perspective of the guy who had it last should pay for it? No. I think they're both equally valid. And so, I think it goes back to, if Bob didn't say something to the council, do we think that still constitutes purposeful neglect? Because that's pretty much what it sounds like. The spirit and intent of the complaint is that it was purposeful neglectful, right? Like malintent.
Yes.
Do we think that Bob not saying that to the council, because I think it would all end there. If we can't say that, if we're going to argue that Bob didn't tell the council, which might not be the case, if we're going to argue that, do we here as a committee, you three, think and agree that constitutes as malicious neglect? And if that's not the case, then I don't see how it could go any further. And that's something I think you guys need to talk about now. Does that make sense?
Sure does to me.
Because there is a difference between saying, you know what, I forgot to say something to somebody, just like I forgot to tell, hey, Scott, bring the thing back, and Bob purposely not telling the council so that they could, give Scott a hard time. And That's what I think the heart of this matter is.
If you take the PA system out of the equation, forget that it ever existed. And Bob has some kind of knowledge, that's pertinent to this town council. Did he willfully withhold this information? This is really the question, because the PA system is relevant. It has nothing to do with this. It has to do with whether or not he withheld any information that was necessary to the council in this particular meeting a year and a half ago.
Right. Now, and even then, let's real quick. I'm sorry, Bob. Even then, let's take it a step further. Let's say that somebody came in and it was God, and he whispered in her ear, "Hey, you know what? Bob did, with malicious intent, prove to do that. Do that on purpose." There's no proof that I've seen, and if there's no evidence for it, then it's really everybody's just shooting from the hip and making assumptions, which isn't fair either. I can completely see Scott's perspective and why he might think that's the case, but I don't. I still haven't. I'm waiting to see some evidence that shows that Bob maliciously did that, because if it's the case that Bob didn't report that, we still need further evidence that shows that he did it with malintent. Withheld information with malintent. And that's what I need to see. I would need to see, I'm sorry, that you would need to see, I would think, to be able to go that far. That's, you know what I mean?
I was going to say, I know last time that you and I talked, back when we were at the dairy, talking about all this first time, you had mentioned that you did say that, you did offer to pay for it.
Right.
Yes.
Which I think everybody concedes to at this point, correct? Everybody agrees that I offered to pay for it. We had that conversation. Mm-hmm. Okay.
The next thing that we talked about is, you had mentioned, he said, no, it's not really the direction we want to go in, Okay,
again, long time ago, that's basically the conversation Bob and I had. Was we were sitting in my car, and it was before anything had gone forward with it. Bob said, well, this thing's got to get paid for, and I was telling him my opinion. I was like, Bob, I think it's low to kick a guy when he's down. Where I'm coming from is I really think if you guys are truly going to want to pursue getting this thing back, I should be the one to have to pay for it. And that's exactly how the conversation went. Now, I think Bob's coming forward like, no, Cole, I don't want you to have to do it, because, again, it sounds like Bob's perspective is the guy who had it last should have to pay for it. We just happen to disagree in that.
Yeah, no, I would disagree with that statement. I know I told you the council was dealing with it.
Okay,
so once you know the council's dealing with it, it's more or less out of my hands. I mean, you were on the council for 2 years. And
it's a group effort.
And you know what it means. And you know people that are still on the council, but I told you the council was dealing with it. It'd be wrong for me to talk on behalf of the council and tell you yes or tell you no. As far as was this done maliciously, the only thing I've ever supported with the council, and the council voted that it should be paid for. It was a council decision. It wasn't Bob's decision. And I supported that decision. It just needs to be replaced. That was it. Period. We didn't care. I mean, as long as it wasn't stolen or something like that, but we didn't care where the money came from. You know what I mean? As long as, you know what I mean? And obviously, he wasn't going to steal the money to pay for it. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying, as long as it gets paid for, we don't care. That was kind of our attitude, with the exception of, I think it was Janet Whitegod. She wanted to write the letter nasty, and I was one of the people in the planning meeting saying, no, we just want our property replaced. We don't want to make this nasty. We don't want to put nobody down. And I know this doesn't count for anything, but I remember when you guys came back to the May meeting, I went and congratulated you guys. Now I feel like I can't talk to Scott because I'm afraid something's going to be used against me. But when I shook his hand, said hi to you, I heard you got married, congratulations. If I really had that much, malice towards you guys, I could have just, walked right by and it wouldn't have even looked awkward. You know what I mean? And that doesn't count for much, but there certainly was no malice. And like I said, we're talking about a year and a half ago. I do remember saying that the council is dealing with it. And like I believe I said this at our last meeting, it's not up to me to get between two grown men. If, Cole wanted to pay for it, he could easily went to the council, or, Scott could have went to the council, and it was a council decision. It wasn't led by Bob at all, believe me. I think to have an hour and a half conversation about, you helping your roommate with his finances,
Right.
you helping him get a job.
Right.
Hey, stay in school, man. It'll pay off. All that kind of stuff. To have a personal, friendly conversation with somebody, I don't think it's something I need to go run to the council and gossip about. You're a grown man, and I'm not saying you're wrong in anything, but you're a grown man, and if you really felt like, oh, I should go pay for this, you had ample opportunity.
Right. And I think, in all fairness, then we could say that it would have been nice for Scott if I would have maybe made more of an effort to go to the council and say, hey, I'll pay for it. In my defense, I kind of thought that it wasn't going to go anywhere. And if they would have, again, this is my fault. What happens when you assume? You don't need to go there. But I thought that maybe they'd contact me after that conversation. However, from the time Bob and I had that conversation to when they first decided to try to take action, I believe was quite some time.
Yeah.
So in all fairness to Bob, even if Bob thought that conversation might have been pertinent, how long before that was that conversation? So the thing is for Scott has done a lot for the council. And Scott has gotten a lot of unfair attacks from the council. Now, Scott also, though, because he is very, when he makes a decision, he goes at 100%, and he's gotten a lot of flack for it. He's brought, I think, a lot of heat on himself, but he's also gotten a lot of unfair heat from the time that I've seen him been on the council, even before I was on the council. And I think this might be a situation where, once bitten, twice shy, and I truly believe that Scott is not lying. I think that he 100% in his heart feels that he was being attacked unfairly. I just think in this case that's not. I don't think that's what's going on here. And that's my opinion now, and I feel that I have the right to share it. I drove all the way out here. You don't have to listen to my opinion because it's not evidence or fact based. I think Scott is feeling attacked. He had a rough time, and again, my opinion, and I'll say it on record that I think that maybe the council should have thought twice about going after the guy, and I don't think that they're going after him personally, but maybe realizing that the guy is having a hard time in his life and losing his house and having to move on the fly, probably not going to be the first thing on his mind to worry about getting square with the council right away. And then when he gets robbed, the guy's getting kicked when he's down, my opinion, not the best time for the council to come from a position of we're going to go after him. That's kind of the bah humbug Scrooge way of handling it. However, is the council in its rights to go after their property? Yes.
You don't go. I agree with all of that. And one thing about the town council is they really can't go after anybody. They can't do anything.
Right.
They can't. All they can say is, okay, Scott, you need to replace the thing, and you can't be a town council member until the situation is rectified. This is exactly what happened, and now this PA system has been paid for, right? Am I right?
Yeah.
Scott's back on the council. Isn't that
his
true?
His name was dragged through the paper. His integrity and his character have been brought into question now, and that's not fair.
Right.
It's wrong.
Here's the problem, and Bob can attest this. There was a time when Bob first got on the council, and Bob wasn't very popular. There was one point where I think Bob said something. It was because I was in school, I had to miss town council meetings left and right. And the council was always more than happy to excuse me. Bob said, you know what, I love Cole, he's my friend. I don't think the council knew that, but if the guy can't be here, maybe the council should have a limit on a number of absences that one can have. Council blew up at Bob. They were all upset at him because I'm a likable guy. Everybody loves Cole. Bob caught lots of flack, and I stood up and said, wait a minute. Sorry, gang. Thanks for the support, but I happen to agree with Bob on this one. Then suddenly everybody thought it was a great idea because I said it. Bob says one thing. He says apples are red, they yell at him. I say apples are red, and they think, Cole, you're the smartest person in the room. I think this is a similar situation where it wasn't, the council collectively made mistakes. Scott failed to bring something back. The council and the president failed to act in their responsibilities and fulfill their duties to get the equipment back. It was all Scott. Not one mention of Cole as the president failing to uphold his responsibilities and so forth and so on was made. And so maybe this is another example where Scott was unfairly singled out. I think that's where Scott's coming from, and I happen to agree a little bit, but that it sounds like Scott was solely responsible when Yes, he was the last person with it, but I still think that somewhere in there should have been, hey, a contact to Cole. What do you think, Cole? You were also responsible. Not one mention of anybody else having an iota of responsibility of at least anything. Cole should have contacted him. Scott's still responsible. Something. And I think that's where Scott's coming from, is he was the only one named in anything with this whole situation. I think simply saying, Cole, yeah, you should have called him too, would have been nice. And none of that was mentioned, and that, I believe, is the issue.
That it may all be true that if you want to use the PA system, apparently we can't not use that, because that's, even though it doesn't say anything in here about that, we have to use this. I have to agree that Scott was the last one with the PA system. If you loan me your television and it gets stolen out of my house, I'm not going to call you and tell you your television got stolen out of your house. I'm going to replace it. If I borrow your car and it gets a flat tire, I'm not going to call you and tell you, come get your car, it has a flat tire. I'm going to replace the tire. Even if he couldn't financially replace the thing, he should have at least said to the town council, I am not in a position financially to replace this thing right now.
In all fairness, I think he did.
No, I was going to say, everyone already
knew that he was...
Then all this is irrelevant.
I think...
Not though.
Okay, tell me what...
So let's go through line by line.
One thing on here where it says Bob is a bad guy. One thing.
It doesn't say that he's a bad guy. It's saying what he did was wrong.
I have to disagree with you.
Well, so that's where we have to go back then. Let's for a moment, if Bob doesn't mind playing devil's advocate and saying maybe he forgot or didn't mention.
With one caveat, that we'll get back to your wife or members saying something, because this is all if I did.
Right,
and,
correct. And I'll make that clear. If you did it.
You said that, I could say yes. I told people, right. But I honestly don't remember, so I can't answer that.
And again, Rob's correct, and I'll start it with a big capital if, IF. If Bob hadn't said anything, is that the way that's written, the willful and wrongful neglect?
No, in my opinion, no. Because I don't see it as Bob being malicious in any way.
And if so, the problem is then it would be, unfortunately for Scott, the burden of proof would fall on Scott because he's asking for the investigation.
You got it. And because according to both of these people, it was a casual conversation that really didn't focus on this PA system per se. They talked for an hour and a half.
No.
Well, let's take it a step further, because let's say that Bob knew I was serious about it. Say Bob knew I wanted to pay for the thing. However, that could just let's use the example. I think I used this the other day of a car accident. If I pull up behind you and I'm too close to you at a red light, and somebody smashes into me and I hit you, the way it works with insurance is I am responsible for your car, even though it's the guy's fault for smashing me into you. Now, all day long the guy in the back could say, I want to take care of it. The insurance companies don't. That's great. You're a good Samaritan, but this is the way it works. Who's the person who had it last? That's the easiest line of attack for getting something replaced. It's two schools of thought. Me, I think I should have replaced it. Equally valid with whoever had it last should have replaced it. And the council chose to go with that avenue, regardless, right? And so that's kind of my point, is I'm still not feeling that even if Bob right now was like, yes, I knew Cole was dead set, he did a rain dance with his checkbook in his hand, I don't see how the council still has a right to say, you know what, that's two schools of thought, this is the one we're going with. Do I have to agree with it and be happy about it? No. Am I? No. But that's the way the council decided, and that's how it has to be. I mean, can we agree on that school of thought and that reason and that logic?
I tell you, right, Emily, I don't hear anything coming from you guys that could convince me otherwise that that there's some malice coming from Bob. Convince me.
Well, okay. You, Cole, offered to pay the council for the system. Yeah.
And I'll even add, I think that Bob knew I wanted. I said, look, Bob, I want to pay for this because Bob knew I felt bad for the guy and the whole situation, and I know I dropped the ball, and that's the word I use. I dropped the ball. Buck stops with me. That's the exact sentence I use. So I'll say my opinion is I think Bob knew that I wanted to pay for it. But does that Bob knowing I want to pay for it constitute as willful neglect or wrongdoing in having the council want to get reimbursed? Do you think that if the council knew that I was jumping up and down to pay for it, if they didn't, because it's a big if that they didn't, would that, do you think, have swayed their decision in any way?
I think it would have.
What do you think?
The guy who says, here, I have the money right now, I feel responsible, or the guy who says, I don't have money right now, and it was stolen. What do you want me to do? I'm sorry. I asked everyone, hey, who wants to take this home at the end of all of the meetings?
Okay, right there. Now that you said that, thank you very much for bringing that up. Because allegedly, he offered to give this PA system to everybody on the town council, but there's not one soul that was on the town council that'll say that that's true. So you remember, I know all about the PA system, and the PA system was never offered to the people on the town council. If that were true, if that were true, why didn't Scott just bring it to the town council and drop it on the desk and say, nobody wants to take this? Here it is. Goodbye.
But
what?
There's no. Now you're responsible for it. If he would have left it on the desk, and no one did, he's
now that you said that,
for it.
He's responsible for it. You just said it yourself.
Oh,
you just said it yourself.
Well, and again,
see, now Cole's saying that he wants to be the responsible party. How did Bob ever get into this?
That's what Bob wants to know.
How did the finger ever get pointed at Bob?
Money was offered to the council.
I think the problem is who...
Money was never offered to Bob.
Okay, he tells the
Cole offered to reimburse the town council for the PA system in a conversation he had with Bob. Didn't offer him money.
Yes, but Bob is also the town council treasurer. As the treasurer, he had the duty to go and say, hey, council, money was offered in this conversation, because there were multiple votes where people voted.
See, and just like Cole said, the town council, the whole town council as a whole, they actually made a mistake by not listening and saying, maybe we can be reimbursed for this. We have no reason to go after Scott. Well, like I said, they have no reason to go after Scott anyway, because they can't get anything out of Scott. They can't do anything. They have no power.
Well, I think too. Then this really, I think in the end, it's a lot of hurt feelings from a lot of different reasons and a lot of different angles. And if I think I dropped the ball by not pushing Scott to get it back because he was having a hard time in his life. And then two, if I had known it would have came to this, I would have gone in and to a town council meeting and offered to pay. Now, I think the reason that this request is coming in is because Scott is feeling, and I don't know if this is the truth or not, that the genesis of the conversation at the town council meetings, because Bob was the treasurer and has the books, of, hey, where's our PA system, was from Bob. And since Bob is the one who said, hey, gang, we're missing a PA system, maybe we should do something about it, that Bob should have also been the one to say, hey, gang, if he didn't, I was offered money for this.
Now, the genesis was in a planning meeting. I think it was May 2011, might have been April, but spring planning meeting. Scott was walking out of a planning meeting, and I don't know guitar amps from PA systems, from woofers or tweeters, you know what I mean?
Okay.
But he was walking out with something that looked like a PA system, and somebody contacted Jason, who was the acting president, and it wasn't me. And Jason thought he was lending it to Scott and sent him an email. And long story short, Scott sent an email back to Jason saying, no, this is mine, yours is gone. That's when the council found out it was gone. Jason didn't know it was gone. I didn't know it was gone. And then that's about the time I called you and said, hey, what happened to our PA system? Because that's when people, because Jason posted the emails to every town council member because it was correspondence with the town council, because he had thought he had lent this PA system to Scott, but in fact it was Scott.
I remember getting the
town council.
and I remember getting the email from Jason asking about that, and he was bringing his amp too back and forth.
Everybody saw that email. That's when everybody realized, hey, what the heck?
Where's our amp? Where's our PA system?
And that was the genesis of the search for the PA system. I mean, it didn't have anything to do with me. I was somebody else asking Jason, why are you lending it out without asking the town council? Because everybody assumed that was the town council's. And when I'm talking in public, generally I raise my voice enough. I don't use the PA system, so I pay attention to it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's like.
Well, the funny thing too about the PA system is when we got it, the mic didn't work. We had to use one of Scott's mics, and the thing never worked well anyway. And the reason it really got flipped to the wayside is that particular system. His amp works a lot better. That particular PA we were using ended up being in my opinion, a piece of crap, which is irrelevant. But that's why we all thought, like you, I'll just stand up and enunciate, and they'll hear me better anyway.
Right, yeah.
So, see, the problem is in the end, we're a town council. We're supposed to be a cohesive group working together as friends and neighbors. And because we have that lax attitude, things get put on the back burner. I don't think it's any one person's fault necessarily. And I think Scott was having a hard time in life, and that's where I'm coming from, is, you know what, as neighbors, that's where we kind of say, we give him the bye on this one. Does that mean that that's the end-all say-all answer? Of course not. I could understand and I can see completely where Scott would feel that he's being attacked unfairly because he has before, and I can say he has been attacked unfairly before by other people. In my opinion, again, not that it's pertinent, I don't think that that's the case in this situation with the PA. Now, maybe you guys have bad blood with other things, but specifically, I don't think that you were going out of your way to leave it out. I do feel, though, that the council should have taken into consideration his situation and also included other people then in being responsible, because I was just as responsible as president at the time for getting stuff back as he was.
Yeah, and that was the town council's decision on what to do. Right. The genesis of this thing had nothing to do with Bob.
It had to do with Jason seeing and I remember getting an email from Jason saying, hey, what's going on with that?
So,
I forgot all about that.
Well, I don't know where we are. I didn't start this. I don't know the problem. I've never talked to Julie Drake.
Well, it's just funny because I know you don't
anything in the paper did not come from me.
It's funny because for that one it makes us smile a little because I know your feelings of Julie. So I'm sure that you guys aren't exactly pen pals. So I'm sure you're not calling her personally. Should we go through then each thing line by line and then make a decision based on maybe we can just break it down that way instead of trying to attack this thing as a whole?
Sure.
What's the first?
It says here, 1, malfeasance, defined as wrongdoing or misconduct in office. Mr. Horsewood admitted at the May 2012 regular meeting that he had a conversation in person with former President Cole McCandless, during which Mr. Horsewood was informed by Cole that he would take full responsibility for not having picked up the PA box from my house and that he would pay in full to have the PA box replaced. Mr. Horsewood admitted during an open meeting having the aforementioned conversation. Following is a transcript from the audio recording of that meeting, which will be provided upon request.
Okay. So, and I think that's the one where Bob says, I don't remember if I did or not.
We're going to read the transcript.
Okay.
But that's, so, the malfeasance part and the wrongdoing or misconduct in office.
I think here's the issue.
Here's what the manuscript says. Bob, no, I did not speak on behalf of the council. I talked to Cole for an hour and a half. He said that he would take responsibility. that wasn't talking on behalf of the council at all. As far as him offering to pay, he might have, he might not have. I don't remember that part. That was like, Scott interrupts. And I'm reading this verbatim.
Yeah.
He's willing to write an affidavit, which is nothing more than a signed statement.
Right.
Sounds official. He had his checkbook out, pen in hand, ready to write it. And Bob interrupts. Bob, no, that's a flat out lie. He didn't have his checkbook out. He was sitting in his car, and I was sitting in my standing next to him, just yapping with his friends. He did not have his checkbook and pen out ready to write a check, and I refused. That I guarantee didn't happen, because if he was serious about that, I would direct him to go talk to the council. I can't take, I believe Callan should be, I was trying to say council, money on behalf without council approval. And that's according to the bylaws.
Well, and he didn't hear it there. And we would argue about what was, the point is, okay, we had a conversation where I offered to pay for the thing. Now, malfeasance and was it say willful wrongdoing? What was it?
Yeah.
I mean,
malfeasance defined as wrongdoing or misconduct in office.
So, I mean, is it, because can we say that if somebody, made a mistake, then is that malfeasance, though? Is that wrongdoing, or is that somebody made a mistake? Because if that's the case, then by definition, I'm guilty of malfeasance and wrongdoing in office. So that's my point. If we want to go there and say, then, well, and again, this is if Bob didn't tell the council. If Bob didn't tell the council, if we label that, which we could say is him forgetting to do it or whatever, if we have to label that as malfeasance and wrongdoing, then not only am I guilty of malfeasance and wrongdoing, any single member of the town council who has ever misstepped with parliamentary procedure or turned something in late or made that type of clerical error is guilty of malfeasance and wrongdoing. So is that the type of verbiage that we want to use for this situation? Or do we call this, maybe you should have or you forgot? Did you do it on purpose? To me, malfeasance, the word mal in Latin, it comes from the root of bad. So maybe, I know we're splitting hairs and talking semantics now, but I consider that purposeful and not accidental. So that's, I guess, the issue here is, do we consider that, because we can't prove purpose, so do we consider his, at best, if that's the case, negligence, is that considered malfeasance and wrongdoing? That's what you guys need to decide right now, because, that's the issue. And then if the answer to that question was yes, then the next step would be to find out if, in fact, right? Because now we're saying he could have, he could not have. We have somebody in the council willing to say he did. Bob is saying, I'm not sure. Maybe I did, maybe I didn't. So that'd be the next step. Before we even go that route, do we consider that malfeasance and wrongdoing?
I think we all know how he feels. So.
We what?
So I think we all kind of know how each other feels.
Well, let's. I get it. We all have a side. We're all trying to.
Yeah, right now, you know what? This is going to go nowhere. This is going nowhere. But for one thing, regardless of what happens here while we sit here, you're Scott's husband. Wife. You're Scott's wife. Scott is your husband. Bob is representing himself as the
right. We definite conflict of interest. We can state a case,
so
and you can state a case of any representative.
This cannot be resolved at this table. It is not possible.
Well, I think though that maybe both could concede that as a neutral representative, that maybe then it's kind of going to be, if you say yes, you say no, then you're going to have to be a tiebreaker.
Well, no, and it's not even a tiebreaker vote thing. That was something that we kind of talked about, I don't know if you remember, at the emergency meetings, that we just pretty much write a paper on, if you think this, here's what you think the, action should be, this person thinks that, this person thinks that, and that's the end of it. Everyone signs it.
It literally appears to me, because I've seen these little investigations many, many times, because my wife's been investigated so many times.
I've heard.
She was Scott even attempted to do this to her. But it appears to me that these little investigations, are nothing more than somebody's personal little vendetta. That's what they really come down to.
Well, and in all defense, you could say to state a case that it's an opportunity for somebody who feels that they've been wrong, to openly have an issue talked about, vetted, aired out, transparent, and then whether everybody disagrees or not.
And I don't see anywhere where Scott's been wronged. Anywhere. Quite the contrary.
Well, and again, but that's not. Let's, in all fairness, that's not what he's asking. In that first statement, that's not what we're talking about. Whether he feels he's been wrong. What we're talking about is, do we consider that by Bob to be malfeasance or neglect? And again. Even and for you, Emily, and for you, Bob, let's state a case that we think we know where Bob's going to answer on that. We think we know where Emily's going to state on that. But I would ask both of you to consider that if, in all fairness, if that is considered wrongdoing and malfeasance by Bob, then I'm also guilty of malfeasance and wrongdoing, and so is many people on the council.
Right. So with the knowledge that Cole is willing to reimburse the town council for the missing PA system, did you willfully withhold this information as a personal vendetta against Scott?
Evidently, I told some people. I'm just being honest and saying I don't
remember. Even if you didn't, let's say you didn't.
Because and you could look at my voting record, and if you, not that anybody wants to listen to a year and a half ago tapes of the minutes, but the only thing as a council person that I ever supported was, okay, we lost property. We need to get it back, because it would be wrong not to get it back, because it really belongs to the people. And we're not, and it's my personal opinion on that matter, and it may not be too germane to this, but my view is real simple, which is we're not being responsible if we just blow off stuff that just turns up missing. Then that's my feeling, and that's all we're ever interested in.
But I'm sure if Scott were here, he would say, I 100% agree with you. And we had somebody airing and ready to go to pay for it. So you had, here's what he would say, in all fairness for Scott. If the council, and here's why he feels this way. If the council's only purpose and only point in this was because they wanted by any means necessary to get paid back, then wouldn't it have been easier to go to the guy that said he'd be willing to pay for it than a guy, and again, the council can't take action against Scott. All they could say was, well, you can't come and play with us anymore if you don't pay for it, which doesn't get them paid back. But the guy who's saying, I feel responsible, so that's where he's coming from. It's like, why wouldn't you go to the guy who's willing to pay for it, but you'll go to you can't squeeze blood from a turnip, and you're saying, I can't come play on the club anymore. So I see where he's coming from in that, and maybe he's thinking that had such information been brought to the council, if the council's intent was simply to be reimbursed, would have said, it's like water's going to flow the easiest way, and if it's got to flow uphill to Scott and downhill to Cole, it's going to flow downhill to Cole. That's where Scott's coming from.
Okay. This all started becoming known in May of 2011. We had a public meeting about it in June of 2011. Okay, 2 days after the public meeting, Scott filed for an investigation against me, and you represented him.
Right. Which I think I believe that.
No, that's all I'm saying is, why don't you just tell him, you know what, I'll pay for the PA system and heck with this.
Was his request for investigation even related to that though?
No.
It was something else.
2 days after he got mad at the council and myself and whatnot, asking for it.
Because if I recall, that investigation request had nothing to do with the PA, though, right?
Right.
And what happened with that investigation? Ended up being dropped because as his investigator, I told him I disagree.
Oh yeah, no, and I'm not rehashing the investigation. All I'm saying is, you obviously had to talk to him. He was obviously irate at the June meeting. He filed an investigation against me 2 days later. You obviously had to talk to him. I mean, if you were serious about paying for it, you could have just said, hey,
well, I think was that already
about the PA system?
Was that after that you guys already made the decision?
No, that's when we first started dealing with it. We didn't make a decision until September, October before it was actually voted on.
Okay, because he knew that I was willing to pay for it. That's why he's been jumping up and down and screaming this the whole time, and that's why I'm the one who gave him the money to pay for it. Because in the end, it was like, sorry, Scott, that it went this way. I wish they would have contacted me. However, in defense of the council, I should have then made more of an effort to let the council know. And I'm not trying to blame you, because evidently I did say that you were willing to pay for it. But all I'm saying is, why does I don't know how
how old I was then. Why is a 47-year-old man got to get in the middle of two other men in their business? That's kind of silly.
And again, which is a fair argument, but the opposite counter argument would be well, simply because if you guys are talking about something, right? If we as a council are talking about buying a palm tree and guy down the street has palm trees half price, it would behoove me to say, hey guys, we could save money and get it done faster by going down the street.
So if I ended up telling people on the council, then his argument is really against the whole council.
His argument is that would that information have swayed them from their decision?
No, because if they knew, okay, I mean, according to your wife, she says she remembers me saying something, then his argument, if the council did know, is now against the council for not taking your money.
No, I think and based on a conversation I've had with him, he feels that such information would have swayed them. My point of view is I disagree. I don't think it necessarily would have, because in the end, when you have to go after somebody for something, you got to go straight to the source. And that's a fair, I disagree with it, but that's a fair and valid.
In the end, regardless of whether or not you were willing to pay for it, if that were apparently that was the case, then it was still in the ball was still in Scott's court to deal with it. Still, because that was his opportunity to say, okay, Cole, may I please have this check and I'll go deal with this and get it over with. The bottom line is, in item number 1, is this malfeasance and wrongdoing on Bob's part? Yes or no?
No, I don't believe so.
Yes or no?
I still think yes.
Excuse me?
I said I still think yes.
I think no. Next. Says continued flagrant and willful neglect of duties. Says Mr. Horsewood, as the treasurer, had a duty to collect funds offered to reimburse the council for a PA box, refused to do so. He failed to report any of the information to the council, even though action regarding that specific subject was discussed by him and voted on by him.
Well, what's hard about that one is that's actually multifaceted. There's several points in there. The first point, that he failed in his responsibility to collect monies. My opinion, no, because again, it was me saying, hey, if the council wants to, let me know. It wasn't me flashing money in his face, because even then it was like, how much is it? You know what I mean? Like, it wasn't a time and place. But I was, in my opinion, I made it clear that I wanted to. But was I trying to hand him money and he refused to take it? No. So the second part of that...
It says right here, I don't know if you read this or not, but it says right here that he is willing to write an affidavit that he had a checkbook in hand. He just said he did not do that.
Right, but what I was willing to write an affidavit saying was, yes, I offered to, I wanted to pay the town council for it. So check in hand, I think, is irrelevant, but point that I wanted to pay, yes. Now, was Bob neglected his duty as treasurer to accept funds? No. The next part, I think, is the part that you guys need to discuss, because that goes back to the first one. Did Bob fail in his malfeasance? No. Did Bob fail in his duty to give all pertinent information to the council? That's the next item that you guys need to discuss. But that's different than malfeasance. That's just saying, did he fail to let the council know?
And like I said, even though my wife said she thought you talked to her about it, that's what she did say is it wasn't official during a meeting. Therefore, that part of the statement that you didn't bring this to the council's attention is true.
Yeah, well, he never offered me money, and like I said, I go back to I have an hour and a half long conversation with a friend, neighbor, about a whole myriad of things, and he tells me he feels responsible for it. It's where do I draw the line about saying, a friend of mine said he feels responsible, so let's call him and
he did not offer you money.
And I don't think that's what that's asking. What that's actually asking is, did you hold information that even could have led to it? Is what I believe that's saying. Not that he offered you money. The first part is saying, did he offer you money? You refuse it. That's not the case. The second part is saying, did you withhold or have information that could have been useful in the situation? Now, then the key is in an hour and a half long conversation where we talked about Rex, we talked about my life, we talked about school, we talked about the dogs and the birds and the bees and whatever. Did Bob remember that point? Yeah, just had a baby.
Sorry.
Low blow. Did Bob? Then we have to be able to prove, did Bob remember that conversation at that point in time? Now, if Bob did and didn't, you could say Bob made a judgment call. Is this even relevant to this? Yes or no? And is that judgment call, would you guys here at this committee consider that judgment call to leave that information out, which he's saying he didn't feel was pertinent? Was that a bad judgment call in that situation? That's what you guys need to decide now.
And all right, was it a bad judgment call? Probably was. Is it grounds to dismiss him from the town council? No.
And I don't even think that it even asks for such. Does it ask for removal?
At the very end thing, it says that they want to kick him off. He wants him kicked off the town council.
So with that, then that part we just went over was multifaceted. The first part was saying, was he neglectful in his duties in refusing to take funds as a treasurer? No. That's now coming from me because I can say I didn't offer to hand. I wasn't trying to put money in his hand, and he said no, hold, wait for a meeting or anything like that. Then the next part is maybe should Bob have mentioned that to the council if he remembered, and that's a big if too because he's saying that the hour and a half long conversation we talked about 10 other things. But if he did remember and made the judgment call, which only Bob can answer now, if he made the judgment call to say, in my opinion, it's not important, was that an error? And that it sounds like you're saying possibly. Now Bob goes.
Yeah, but okay, and then you're saying if.
Because I'm not in your head. I don't know if you remember it at the moment or not.
No, I do remember telling you the council is dealing with it.
But later at the council when it got brought up, did you remember that conversation? And if you did, that's what the point is right now. Because if you didn't, then you didn't. Well, that's
right. So,
if you want to pay for it, go see the council.
Right.
If I try to broker something, I'm in definite contradiction of the bylaws. I cannot speak on behalf of the council. Otherwise, that is no ifs, ands, or buts, a strong case for removal.
Right.
That's right.
So when I instruct people to go to the council, then, in my opinion, that absolves me of responsibility because I'm not getting into it. He said, she said, he said, and then all of a sudden the council's like, okay, well, let's talk to so-and-so because so-and-so said they thought that he might do this.
I think now what they're saying is once you got to the meeting and once it got brought up, if it did pop in your head that, hey, Cole wants to pay for the thing, it wouldn't have been a he said, she said thing. It would have been like, hey, gang, BTW, by the way, this guy's willing to pay for it. And what they're asking is if at that moment it did pop into your head and in your mind you're like, it's totally irrelevant, no, then maybe that wasn't the best judgment. That's, I think, is that the issue we agree that we're speaking to right now? Right, and that's if it popped in your head at that moment.
My opinion is, if you had told me, tell the council this, which I don't remember you telling me, then I would have wrote it down and I'd have told them.
Okay, but that was something I was adamant about. Even in the conversation, I was upset that they were going to want to do that. And I was like, no, Bob, this is how I feel about it. Now, again,
our conversations were long before we even had a decision.
Right, but it was way before any of it was even serious. But I was upset that they'd even go after him about it, and I was adamant about I want to pay for it then. So that's what they're saying is if at the council member at the meeting, which was still weeks later, if it did pop in your head, which I get it, it was way before that we had this conversation. Mm-hmm. If it had popped in your head at that moment, and you decided not to say something about it because maybe you're thinking, oh, it's a big deal, it wasn't serious, whatever. That's what the issue is now. If it popped in your head and you decided not to say something, is that an error, a mistake, bad judgment?
Well, also, if you were adamant about paying for it and taking responsibility, then
right. Why is it okay? In all fairness, then why didn't I contact the council? Why does it right? And
if you don't go tell the council, then hey, you know what? I want to take responsibility for it. Let me do it. Which the council wouldn't have had a problem with it. They just want to be reimbursed the money they lost. But if you had done that, okay, that's one thing. Okay, if I go and speak on something that I'm not sure, then you open up a can of worms. You know what I mean?
I do, but I don't think in that case it would have been a can of worms. But in all fairness for you,
that's all assumption.
You're right. And in all
Because
fairness, I should have gone to the council, and if I would have walked in, I guarantee none of this would be happening right now. If I would have walked in and said, during the public comments, I want to pay for this, the council would have been happy to accept my money.
Absolutely.
Is really the issue. So how much of the burden, and again, I don't even think it's a burden. I think it's an issue of pseudo, where you can say to me, I wasn't on the council.
I'm not attacking you.
No.
I'm just saying, I'm not in the habit of speaking for other grown-ups. And if you were serious, I kind of wish you just went to the council and said,
I wish I 110% agree.
I wish you would have too.
I think all of us here agree on that one thing.
This gentleman, Mr. Lezak, had already filed, in my opinion, insulting charges against me. Because I really don't. I don't want to get in the middle of his dealings because I don't want to be in another investigation, which is why anything that has to do with him, it's just safe for me to say, go to the council.
Keep your mouth shut.
And I know I said, go to the council dealing with it. Because that's my standard response to everybody. If somebody talks to me about plastic bags, they like the fact that they're banned, I say, we'll come to a council meeting.
That's the story. I think the problem is for me, I wasn't on the council anymore, and which is not at all anybody else's fault, right? But for me, I think my feeling was it would have been nice for me to know, and if I wanted to know whose fault is that, that's mine. I should have gone to a council meeting then. But in my opinion, I think it was one of those things where if it was going to go down that road, I wish I would have known because I would have showed up and paid for the thing. Is that anybody else's fault but mine? No.
And here's the. It's a year and a half later, and it's paid for, and
a year and a half later, and it's paid for.
And so it's kind of like, I hate to tell you, I'd rather be alone with my wife.
Right. Like I said, is this, put it to you simply, is this error in judgment? Maybe. Is it a reason enough to have Bob removed from the council? My opinion, no.
I have to agree with you on that too. Because even again, if we wanted to just play the what if game, if Bob knew and he got to the meeting and it popped in his head and he remembered the color shirt I was wearing that day and clearly remembered I was adamant about it, and he decided not to say something, that to me is bad judgment, not reason to kick somebody off the
That's right. And with all due respect, the only thing I remember is I'm still wearing the same socks.
So, and then moving right along, misrepresentation of the council or the council's position to any person or groups orally or in writing. Mr. Horsewood once again made a false and misleading statement when he told Mr. McCandless that the LA was not interested in being reimbursed, but was interested in going after me instead. Any council member, especially the treasurer, when presented with an offer of money for reimbursement, must bring this matter to the attention of the rest of the town council members. Mr. Horsewood failed to do so. Number 4 is the same as number 3. It's just worded differently.
Well, and I think in that sense, it sounds like he's basically saying, correct me if I'm wrong, is he saying that it sounds like in a fancy way saying that Bob told me no, we don't want your money, we want to go after Scott.
Exactly.
And that to me, again, sounds, I don't think Scott's trying to lie purposely. I don't think he's lying at all, but I think what he's doing is he took what I said maybe out of context. And what I said was, and what Bob did say was, Cole, we don't want you to have to pay for it. You're like, no.
It's pretty tough for Scott to make a statement like this when he wasn't standing there.
Right, but it's based on a conversation I had with him saying how Bob said, no, Cole, I don't, and that's what Bob's, was like, Cole, no, I don't want you to have to pay for it. So, if, and again, Scott's not here, and this is all my opinion, but if Scott's using a black or white reasoning, Scott's reasoning, and here's how you come to that conclusion. Well, if you don't want you to have to pay for it, Cole, then they must want me to pay for it, therefore it's an attack on me. And that's where that sentence is coming from. However, I think it's incorrect. I think Bob did say, no, Cole, I don't want you to have to pay for it, but that doesn't necessarily mean, because there are more options than the one or two black and white, that the other only option must be that Scott, we're going after you. I don't think that's necessarily the case, and I don't think that's what Bob meant. Bob was simply saying, I don't want to have to see you pay for it, Cole. because in Bob's opinion, it's not my responsibility.
The town council, as a whole, except for one or two people that wanted to write a nasty letter, the town council as a whole, the only thing they ever supported was just being reimbursed. You know what I mean? And like I said, I still can't talk for the council. And I can't tell you, even if they wanted to go after Scott personally, or instead of seeing the money, that'd be wrong for me to tell you. Hey, the council wants to go after Scott. I can't talk for the council until the council agrees. You know what I mean? Well, what the heck would be the point of just? What would be the point of trying to get refunded what the council lost by personally picking a fight with somebody if somebody was willing to pay for it? Now the problem with this statement number 4 is, no, you never did try to hand me money. So when the treasurer is presented with an offer of money for reimbursement, no, I don't. First of all, I don't have a duty to accept it until the council says so, because the treasurer, according to the bylaw, receives authorized money.
I think everything in that paragraph you could cross out except for the knowing, the information part, because everything else you're not. Even if I had, which I will say right now, I didn't try to hand the money, and even if I had, you wouldn't be able to accept it. So anything talking about specifically him refusing money is irrelevant. The only thing then that could hold water in that sentence would be that the informational part, which is what we were talking about before.
That's right.
And we already agreed that if he had remembered and refused, not refused, but on purpose decided, you know what, I don't think that's relevant, then it would simply, at best, be bad judgment or, a bad decision. Grounds for removal, my opinion, not that, no. And again, that's a big what if, because that's all predicated on it being in Bob's head.
I want to ask you a question.
Yeah.
Okay, we were on the town council for a year together. Okay, you have a good reputation. Do you think it bothers me? I mean, my opinion of myself is I don't care so much who likes me, and I don't care so much who don't like me.
Right.
I just want to do what's right, and if I'm doing something wrong, I want to correct it, regardless if the person don't like me or the person does like me. That says, hey, I think you're doing something wrong. But I don't base what I do on whether somebody likes me or dislikes me. I just do what I think is right. And this isn't part of why sometimes the council got irritated with me, like with your absences, because I like it. It's like
everybody loves Cole, right? So you're right.
Right. So I'm the bad guy, but. I've never went after anybody personally or with an investigation. I've never talked to the press. All that seemed right to me, which is what the council did, which was say we need to be reimbursed, and that's the only thing I supported. Yeah, we need to be reimbursed, and that was it. What would be the point because of going after somebody personally? I don't get that petty.
Right, and I guess again, what it is
is that sometimes, but I don't get that petty,
And I think what's happening here is based on that logic. Where Scott's coming from is then if that was your only goal, why didn't you do this? Why didn't you say to the council, Cole's willing to pay? Unfortunately, what we have to remember here is the absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. So the fact that you did it doesn't mean that you did on purpose. It's not evidence that I didn't tell the council so we could go after Scott. And that's really what I think the foundation of this argument is because you didn't go, because you knew Cole was willing to pay, you didn't go after it, you must be attacking Scott personally. And I don't think that doesn't, it's a fallible type of an argument. It doesn't.
On the other side of that, my personal opinion is if you're real serious, and I tell you to talk to the council, well, you go talk to the council. You're going mad.
And again, that's where Buck falls with me. And I think this would have been the whole thing. One, if I would have gone to the darn meeting and paid for it, or two, I think again Scott was feeling attacked simply because I think the council is a group effort. Anytime one person, in my opinion, especially or at the very least, anytime one person makes a mistake, it's really the responsibility of two people on the council. Because there's always, the treasurer has a responsibility, the president has a responsibility to make sure that you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, and so forth and so on. Really, that's the president's only function, right? You're a glorified person that says, okay, we're good, because the president doesn't have any other responsibility. So the president then is also responsible for such things, in my opinion, and I think such verbiage included in what happened with Scott, either Cole or Scott having to pay for it, would have made Scott feel bad. But I think I see why Scott thought he was being attacked personally. Again, personal opinion speaking, I don't think that he was being attacked personally in this situation. Maybe he feels other things have been attacked personally. We're not talking about that tonight. I'm talking about right now, this situation, no.
Scott being attacked personally, I don't see it. I don't see it anywhere. I don't. Just like we all said, the last person to have a hold of this thing is the person responsible for it. Plain and simple. There's no attack. Here, the bottom line here is this: is there enough here to have Bob removed from the town council? I say no.
Well, obviously, I say.
So I still stand.
Mm-hmm.
But I said I still stand here. I think yes. I think in the very least there should be an apology made for a misjudgment, I guess. In the very least, if we put it down.
Now that I might agree to that you might say, for instance, I had knowledge and I made a bad call. That's the only thing that I could see going here any further than this. But removal from the town council, absolutely not.
Absolutely not.
Yeah, I would apologize for that if there was a public apology for all the lies that are in here about my character. Because we keep talking about how Scott's the victim. This is just an attack on my character, and it's flagrant, it's insulting, it's libelous, it's slanderous, and whatever. But that's the bottom line. If he's going to apologize and admit to the lies that are in this, then I'll apologize for saying, you know what, honestly, I wasn't sure Cole was serious. I didn't bother mentioning it.
I think, in all fairness there, though, I don't think that you could call, they're accusations. And again, we'd be doing the same thing, then we'd be trying to assume that we knew that he either purposely did it falsely. If this is false, if you do it on purpose, then it's a lie. If he really feels this, then it's not a lie, it's what he thinks. So if the council then, if the findings were to say, we as a committee find each and everything here to be erroneous, and in our opinion, it's all unfounded, isn't that then the same as that being publicly saying that you're exonerated of all of those things? Do you know what I mean? Because I get what you're saying. There's four accusations against your character, and if the committee goes forward and says, we, the committee, find that each and every one of these accusations are unfounded. However, we do think this one thing that, it would have been nice if the council knew. Would you concede to that? Would you think that that'd be a fair statement? Because then you're being exonerated. Because I know you're saying, you're like, hey, in your opinion, you're like, I'm being attacked here. I don't agree with any of this. It's attack against my character. If this committee goes forward and
that's exactly the way I see it. I don't see that you did anything wrong. Not one single thing wrong, except maybe a lack of quality memory.
Which I'm guilty of.
You know what I'm saying?
But the thing is that at best it's almost a way of saying to the council too that, hey, you know what? And that's what I'd like to, if you guys wouldn't mind, regardless of what Bob decides to do, I want a statement in there for myself, if possible, saying Cole still feels responsible for his part in this. And again, say bad memory. You know what I mean? I wish I would have gone to a council meeting, and I still do feel in my heart that there is a certain amount of responsibility that I need to bear here, because as the president, when the guys, and as a neighbor, when the guy's having a hard time, he just got kicked out of his house, he thought he's going to have to live in his car, he finds a place, moves in, and he gets robbed. As a neighbor and a human being, I think that if it was his responsibility, that's where we come together and pick up the slack and say, hey, buddy, do you have this thing? We need it back. Instead of saying, oh, that's all your fault. You know what I mean? That to me is low. So I'd like to have that in there too. Just something where Cole, if you want, I'll send you a statement, and you guys can all, if you want to read it, and something that you don't agree to. But it would simply be saying, it wouldn't be mentioning anybody else's name. It would simply be saying, hey, just so it's on the record, I feel that, there is a certain amount of responsibility that falls with Cole too, and let it be known in the record, from now on that that's the case. You know what I mean? So,
I'm good with that.
Again, but that goes, and it goes to me saying too, guilty of having a bad memory and not being perfect. And I think that's what, in that case, that's pretty much what that's speaking to, is if Bob did say that, it's guilty of having a short memory, or guilty, fine, sorry, not even guilty, but like, okay, maybe then the council would have liked to know that.
Because Emily, the bottom line is there was did Bob show malice towards Scott in any way here? Did he show malice? I don't see it.
I'm still sitting in the same place, and that's the thing. Now that we all know where everyone sits, and we've come to the conclusion that an apology can be made of some sort, that's all we have to write up, and that's all we have to do. There's no vote. Bob can say this, you can say this, and I can say this, and if we want, we can attach what Cole thinks on the back, staple it, and here you go, town council. That's it. That's all. Nothing else has to be done right now.
Well, I think what we can agree to at this second are that those allegations against Bob are erroneous, right? That they're unfounded.
I find them unfounded.
And then the one thing, though, that it sounds like is still, and then for me personally, I still think I have some responsibility there too. That's not even part of this investigation, neither here nor there. The one thing that sounds like it's still being contended then is the one issue of should Bob have mentioned something or not.
With all due respect, she's contending everything.
Are you contending everything, or just that the statement itself?
I am, I'm still in the same place, and that's why I'm saying the town council told us we don't have to vote. We don't say, this is what's going to be done, this is...
Right.
This person thinks this person thinks this person thinks this. Everyone signs it, and the town council does what they do.
I think what you're talking about is as both sides of the committee, right?
Yes.
The investigators, you guys, in the end, what happens is you put out you put out you feel, and then it comes down to him making his recommendations. Based on the evidence I have from both of the investigators, here's what I think. So really then it comes down to what you want. If that's, you know what I mean? Because it would be nice if we could all come to agreement and everybody would be happy. But in the end then what's going to happen is you're going to make your statement, Bob's going to make his, and in the end Ron here is going to go up and say, so here's what I got, here's what Bob thinks, here's where we ended, here's what Emily thinks, and then here's my findings, and here's my suggestions, town council. Right?
Yeah, and I think what she's also alluding to is, the chairperson's not a deciding vote.
Right.
And
no. You're right, right. Because the council is the deciding factor.
Right.
What I think.
The last investigation, actually with your wife, she disagreed with the committee report.
Okay.
So the council met with the committee chairperson, Mrs. Newt's representative, and Earl, I guess it was Earl, his representative in executive session, and the council just weighed everything.
But you're correct, Emily. It's not that there's a vote. But what I'm kind of getting at is that it sounds like...
What I'm getting at is I just want to be done tonight. We all know how we all feel. So all we have to do is type up, hey, this is what I want to say. This is what you want to say.
And then Ron puts what he wants to say, and then
everyone
the council
signs
makes a
it,
decision.
and then gives it to the council.
Well, I think what I'm just... FYI, this is the sign, by the way, I'm signing. FYI... is more times than not, I would think that the council would look at both sides and then look at the neutral parties, what they think, and they're probably going to go with what the neutral party feels.
Yeah, you're perfectly within your right. With all due respect to you, you're perfectly within your right not to agree with him or me. You know what I mean? And tell the town council what you want to do. I mean, that's
well,
obviously,
and that's why I think
that's obviously your right. You know what I mean? So it's not like he and I are going to agree, or you and him are going to agree.
Yeah, I'm not.
And
it doesn't sound like Ron's going to agree completely with either one of you.
Nobody's going to get outvoted here.
Right.
So and that's why everyone.
You want to exercise your rights to take it to the council, then that's your right.
Initially, for the investigations in the bylaws, it says we write up a paper on what we think. what we found, So you'd write up, this is what I think about this is how I find this, these are my recommendations.
Right.
You'd do the same, and I'd do the same, and then we'd all sign it and give it to the council.
Fair
That's
enough.
it.
And the bylaws or Robert's Rules of Order?
Bylaws. Pretty sure.
I think that sounds, and again, that's the whole point is remember that you guys are a committee, which is simply just you're just a glorified fact-finding organization, right? Just like any other committee, and you report to the council. You give information to the council, and so that, she's correct.
Excuse me. Regardless of whether we agree or not, I appreciate the fact that you do this.
Yeah, thanks, you guys. It's fun, right?
It's stressful
I don't
for
know how
everyone.
I'm not sure how I got roped into this.
I don't know either, but I'm 100% honest. I appreciate you doing it, and if we disagree, there's no hard feelings.
Yeah.
Believe me. It just, no offense, I wouldn't do it.
It's what do they call
I think, and my honest opinion too is that that the town council, ought to think this over for their future little investigations. That people this close shouldn't be,
For their bylaws committee.
like I don't think that really that it's fair to either Bob or Scott for Scott's wife to be Bob's
Scott's
investigator and Bob to represent himself. And one of the reasons I feel this way about that, Bob, is because the accusations are pointed at you, but yet Scott's not allowed to be sitting here.
Right. Yeah. Well,
If you were not representing yourself, then your representative would be sitting here, and you'd be outside with Scott.
I get it. I get it that the bylaws don't say that you can't, but I don't think that's necessarily the best course of action. And I get it too. You could state a case that, hey, any investigator that's going to represent somebody is going to be chosen. Fine, if it's not their wife, we're going to pick somebody that is going to side with their best interest, and therefore there's some inherent bias. However, I personally can state a case that that's not necessarily true because I've represented Scott as his investigator, and I completely disagree with him.
Right, and after talking to you about it, that's what I thought. And I'm not sure that investigators, are the right people for the job in this particular case.
Right.
That's just my opinion.
But and that's something you can add into your report.
Yeah, that's right.
You can
writing that down.
But I get how hard is it to represent one yourself or your husband? You know what I mean?
There's
going to be
a July or I think it was a July meeting, and taking somebody represent himself because and this is just my opinion. I can represent myself in a court of law. Well,
right.
who knows better,
than yourself
than myself about this? And we live in a small town, and trying to find somebody who wants to be a chair or wants to be an investigator. And when you talk about,
and that's why there are restrictions. That's why there are
restrictions. Kennedy, I don't know how many hours she spent representing me last year when Scott filed an accusation against me, and it's like, well, who do I want to burden with that? And I asked, and the council said, well, the bylaws don't say you can't, so you can. And it's like, okay, and there was no investigation on me at that time, so...
And I get the logic, and it's one of those things where it's like, is it the best way to do it? No. Do I have a better solution?
No.
In light of what Bob just said, I don't, because I get it completely. Who are you going to find that gives it that one, even if they're interested, once they find out how much work it is really willing to do it? I get it. It's just one of those things where we go, we wish we could do it.
I already know the subject matter, and I got to research things, you know what I mean, and try to refresh my memory, but I feel I've been 100% honest. I admitted I don't know if I told council people. I could have said, yeah, as soon as you told me that your wife knew about it. I said, well, yeah, that's because I mentioned it. But I honestly don't remember if I did or I didn't. And you have to take me at my word.
And again, the problem with my wife and knowing it is, what she says, she says, I don't know when I knew this. She says because it's been so long. It could have been well after after the vote. It could have been a month ago.
Well, right.
Because of all this time that's taken place between then and now. As she says, I vaguely remember him saying something, but I don't know when. It could have been, it could have been 2 months ago. It could have been a year ago. I don't know.
Right. And all I'm saying is, I don't know if I told anybody. I don't know I did. I don't know that I did.
So, there you have it.
Okay, so can we just go over recommendations we have for the bylaw committee to look at the kinks?
Sure.
And then call it a night? To look at the kinks. I know you mentioned that you didn't think it was a good idea to have someone represent themselves or, me being his wife. I think that it's safe to say that you aren't allowed to represent yourself. You aren't allowed to have a relative.
Shouldn't, yeah. I think, and I get it that it's hard to find decent people, but I do think that somebody that's that closely related.
Right, I would make a suggestion, as a bylaw change that one family member cannot represent another.
Yeah, so
and one cannot represent themselves.
Yes, no self, no relative.
Because even in our heart of hearts, and I try to be, a neutral person myself, but I'm gonna be biased. I'm gonna, you know what I mean?
Sure.
I'm gonna, yeah.
And like I said, the thing about Bob, you representing yourself is that you're allowed to sit here. But Scott's not, and I don't see that as being fair for some reason.
Oh, yeah, but he could have represented himself.
He could have, he could have.
I think though that he and his thing was that's not cool. He said, that's
right, and I think that would have been worse.
That's not true.
Right.
Because at the last emergency meeting we had, he was competition to change his investigator. And then everybody was like,
said no, he wasn't going to do that.
Not to, so that we
because it says community member, it's implied that you weren't supposed to, but they.
Well, that's the problem then with implied or explicit, because people read it different, right? We can, as a sign language, I test right now. I'm a translator for a living, and I can take one sentence, and depending on the place and when and where and who said it and their cultural background, mean completely different things. Mm-hmm. So that's the problem with implications or implied versus explicit language. So I think that'd be good to make that explicit then, if that's maybe the intent of what they meant by it. You're right. That's why I would agree. So seems like you guys got some.
Obviously, I think people ought to be able to represent themselves. That's my
sure you do.
Well, yeah. It wouldn't bother me if Scott chose to represent himself.
It would be. I think there would be a little.
I think
a little more combative.
I think the problem too, though, is that even the language you're using for represent, it's not even that again, this is where it's different. This isn't a court of law. You're not. You know what I mean? This is simply the point of an investigative committee is for three people to get together and to look at the facts, and that's the whole point. Is the reason you form the committee is so that it's not the people involved. I would assume it doesn't say that clearly, and maybe that's where we disagree. But I get it, and I get what you're saying, representing yourself. But I don't.
My opinion,
right?
Assumptions and
implications.
That's
just my opinion. Right? That's just my opinion, and I don't care. I don't. In the end, I don't care one way or the other. I really don't. Because when this is all over, I'm going to go back to my little life of being a non-Lake LA council member, plain and simple.
I'm just assuming I'll have
You mean, Ron, after this experience, you're not interested in running next November?
Are you kidding me? With all that crap going in my ear.
I'm assuming by February or March I'll have another investigation against me, so I'll keep my options
probably
open.
will. My wife, I think she's at like 7 or 8 of them right now.
Well, and also Scott too. I think honestly, it's frustrating that it happens that way, but I think if you're not getting investigated for something, you're probably doing something wrong with the way town council politics are.
If a town council member, if a town council member is really doing something wrong, then there's the investigation process is a great way to bring this to light and get this person thrown off, run out of town on a rail or whatever. But to
which has been done successfully.
But to use it for somebody's personal vendetta is an entirely different thing. And every single time my wife has gone through this process, it's been nothing more than somebody's personal vendetta against her.
And that gets old.
And it does get old. And it shows that how petty some of these town council members are, or even the people that aren't council members to bring this kind of crap up.
I would state a case too, though, that 9 out of 10 of the most personal, the vendetta type investigations have been brought on by non-council members, members of the community or sour grapes. So, well,
you know what?
I hope I've been helpful.
My good friend that was once a town council member, whatever that old man's name is, that's got
Earl.
the big mouth.
Earl.
You know, now the investigation for him, to me, would have been a baseball bat in a dark alley. That's just my opinion.
Can we agree to call it a night now that we know how everyone feels?
I think,
okay.
So,
Alright.
I guess it doesn't matter what that sounds like. You guys need anything from me? Call me.
Did you still want to attach the?
Yeah, I'll just I'll call you and get your email. But what I'll do is I'll CC it and send it to all of you guys if that's okay.
Okay.
No, we don't have email.
Yeah, okay, I was going to say...
do you want to CC it?
I might have to just... well, what I'll do is
Do you want to maybe send it to Bob and I?
I'll send it to both of you. And then, and again, I'm going to tell you right now, it has nothing to do with either party. It'll be all about me. It's really, you know what I mean? Just so you guys know now, because I don't think it'd be fair for me to mention anybody else. It's something I feel I have to do.
Well, thanks for everybody being civilized.
It's good stuff, you guys.
Actually, I know we disagree,
God bless
but
America.
I appreciate, that nobody start calling each other names.
Well, that's the nice part, and I consider myself,
to be civil.
I consider Scott a friend of mine, I consider Bob a friend of mine, and I know Scott and I disagree on things all the time, and Bob and I disagree on things all the time, but we're still friends.
You can agree to disagree.
Yeah, well, Bob thinks that I'm handsome, I don't think I do.
Well, sometimes Paul's wrong, and he doesn't want to listen to reason.
We're all wrong. We're all wrong sometimes.
We're all wrong.
That's part of being a human.
Thank you, Ron.
Yeah. If you've done nothing wrong, you
Ain't doing nothing.
Yeah.
That's right. That's our motto at work. If you don't do anything wrong, I say great nothing else. Emily, it's been a pleasure talking to you. Anything I could buy. I feel like I need to buy something else. Ron, always a pleasure. Yeah, it's cool. The best thing, I guess if they have email it to them.
Okay. Fair enough.
Take care of it that way.
Sounds good. Thanks, Ron.
Bob?
Have a good night.
Emily, can I buy you drinks? Or a soda?
He's out there sitting.
I'll buy him one too. I'll take care of it. I'll take care of it.
You don't have to get one.
All right. What do you want? All right.